What is up, everybody? This is Ryan for the Scale Up Show. You're not going to want to miss this one. This one's amazing. I have Yahya Mokhtarzada on, who was the founder and former CEO of Truebill, which he just done something amazing that I've never seen before. Took his company from $1.5 million, $2 million, all the way to $100 million in 2.5 years. Something else that he did amazing is he later turned around and sold that once they got to 100 million mark for $1.3 billion to Rocket, formerly Rocket Mortgage. So he actually breaks down his step-by-step process on how he made that a reality, and you can instantly apply it to your business. You're not going to want to miss it. Check it out. Welcome everybody to the Scale Up Show. This is your host Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Yahya Mokhtarzada, who is the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Truebill, which was acquired by RocketMoney for $1.3 billion, in which he helped grow the company from 0 to 100 million with his brothers, who are also co-founders. Yahya, welcome. Happy to have you on the show, man.
Thanks. Great to be here. Just a quick correction. We sold it to Rocket Companies, and we're changing the name to RocketMoney.
Okay. Well, thank you for that correction. That's what I had in my notes, so apologize for that. So we'll make a note on that, make sure it's correct. So before we get too deep into kind of the episode, it'd be real quick. Want to go through what's called a revenue rundown. So can you give us an understanding of where you're at in terms of your revenue stage right now, in terms of your ARR?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's north of 100 million. It's been doubling year over year or more for quite some time. So growth is still really, really strong. One of the interesting or helpful things about our business is it tends to get boosted by economic uncertainty. So for instance, when COVID started, or when the US entered, whether we're in a recession or not, high inflation and what looks like a recession, people get more worried about their finances. And Truebill, being a personal finance app, means we benefit from that in two ways. One, obviously people are just more interested in getting their finances in order. And then two, as other companies kind of step back, we can actually capitalize on that marketing efficiency that becomes available to push forward even faster.
Excellent, man. Well, that's good. So you're definitely thriving. Obviously, 2x year-over-year growth at 9 figures is over nine figures plus is really impressive. So we definitely want to dig into that. What's your primary go-to-market strategy for revenue growth right now?
It's primarily paid acquisition. One thing that I think we excel at is we probably run a more diversified marketing mix than any company I could possibly think of. So obviously we do the obvious social channels like Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. But then we just have sort of this relentless team that's super creative in finding new opportunities to get our name out there. So that means digitally, channels like Reddit and YouTube down the line, but it also means we do a ton out of home. So we do taxi tops, we do box trucks, we've done fortune cookies, where we have ads inside the fortunes of fortune cookies. We really make a big effort to get promotion from influencers, from podcasters, and really everywhere else. So that's super diverse marketing mix, and then of course TV commercials also. But I think that super diverse marketing mix is one of the key things that sort of helped us scale and accelerate beyond competitors or just other companies in the space.
Okay, so you pretty much, that's a rainbow of different customer acquisition channels that you have right there. The one that I did not hear you mention, which is near and dear to my heart, is have you systemized any customer to prospect referrals?
No, so not to say we haven't tried, right? But organic growth and referral growth was never really a strong suit for our company. And I've got 100 hypotheses why, but I think fundamentally, look, if you're rich, then your personal finance, you feel great about it, but you don't like talking about it because you're not supposed to talk about it, right? And if you're sort of not doing super well in terms of your finances, or just not where you want to be is even a better way to put it, right? Which is pretty much everyone. It's not something that people fundamentally like to talk about or like to share. Mm-hmm. And then with the personal finance app, it's even tougher because there's a stigma where it's like, oh, are you using this app because you're having trouble with your money, mm-hmm. right? So people don't like to share it. So we've tested multiple referral programs, and it just, where it would work with other products, I think in personal finance, it's just a lot more difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a good hypothesis, and interesting. Is basically like perceived as like a status decrease, right? If you're doing that, so which people are really sensitive to. So that leads us into our next question, right? And we want to dig into some of the go-to-market components, because obviously with that broad spectrum, there's got to be some amazing nuggets and patterns and trends that you've seen. So let's talk about your solution though. So what exactly does it do, and how does it serve people?
Sure. So RocketMoney, which is what we call the app now, I'm biased, but I really think it's the best personal finance app out there in terms of just really giving you a comprehensive set of tools to understand your money and do better with it. Mm-hmm. When I started building it, I tried all these other budgeting apps, and they would do things like give me an alert and say, you spent too much at dinner last night, you need to come back, right? And I always hated that. Like, not only did I hate it, but it wasn't helpful. Like, I know what I spent on dinner last night. I was there. I signed the check. Like, this is not helpful, right? So I wanted to create like the finance app for me that would make my life easier and put money back in my pocket, but not ask me to not go out to dinner or to sacrifice my lifestyle. And so that formed a lot of the core features that we built into RocketMoney. So for instance, the first thing we launched with was just tracking and canceling subscriptions. So when you sign up, you get this really clean dashboard. You connect your credit cards or bank accounts, so we scan the transactions, and you get a really clean view of everything you're paying for. And I think most people are surprised to just see how many things they're paying for per month and how much money is flowing out of their account automatically, right? And then we take it a step further, and if you don't want that newspaper or whatever subscription it is, and you're not using it, you don't have to call and wait on hold for 20 minutes and explain why you want to cancel. We have a button right there in the app, and you can click cancel this for me, and it'll get rid of it for you.
How does it do that?
Right. So
wait. How does it do that? Just tell me really quick, because I literally just dealt with this crap a couple weeks ago, where the freaking Chicago Tribune held me at hostage. It wouldn't let me cancel. I had to call, and anyways, don't get me started. But how does it do that?
It really depends on the service, right? So what happens is, there's no like easy solution to build something like that, right? You launch it, and in the beginning, and by the beginning I mean the first couple of weeks of the company, it was me getting on the phone and calling the Chicago Tribune on your behalf, right? But as you get volume, you sort of start building a knowledge base of like what is every subscription out there, and like how can it be canceled, right? And so then you find out, okay, maybe this service has this fax number, and we can actually like auto generate a fax to go in there, and they don't publish the fax number, but it exists, and that'll work. Or this one, it's something easy where they have an email address that you can send something to. Or maybe you build a robot or a scraper that will actually log into your account for you, and like the mouse will navigate and click the cancel button automatically, right? On some server somewhere. And so, there's no one way to cancel all subscriptions, but as you do this millions of times, and you have a team dedicated to making it scalable and making it efficient, you just build out this massive cancellation engine, which is sort of an interesting asset that you end up sitting on over time.
All right, man. Sorry about that. A little personal pain there, in case you couldn't tell, from something that I experienced. So keep going. I totally threw you off track, but keep going, man.
Yeah, no worries. And so then from there, the product evolution was really just sort of the core team saying, well, what else would I like this thing to do? And so the next thing was bill negotiation. So I said, what would be awesome is if this could lower my Comcast bill or my cable bill or lower my cell phone bill, right? And so now, after you get rid of your subscriptions or after you sign up, the app looks at your cell phone, your cable bill, whatever other bills you have, and says, hey, you know what? Like, we see people similar to you paying less for the same service. And that may be because, for instance, you got your cell phone 2 years ago and a better plan is available, but you just haven't switched to it, right? And it's got more minutes and more data, and it just costs less. So, or maybe you've been there for 2 years, and we happen to know that phone company has a 2-year loyalty discount that they'll give you if you argue with them over it, right? So it'll identify your negotiable bills, and if you give us permission, we'll get in touch with all those providers and lower your bills. And then from there, it's just got a whole suite of other features. So for instance, it will help you create and set budgets. It'll give you all sorts of transaction monitoring and transaction reports, so you can see sort of where you're spending your money in context in a way that's digestible, so that you can really understand what's going on and then improve it over time. And then it has other things you'd want, like credit score, credit reports, automated savings where it'll help you automatically set aside money to save for any number of financial goals. And we even have a credit card in beta right now that I think is just a better credit card than what's out there for most people.
Okay, that's awesome, man. And do you want to give a real quick plug for the new credit card, real quick?
Yeah, it's called the True Card. It's in beta, so it's not open available yet, but there's a wait list. But if you look at the economics of most credit cards, they're really designed to get you into debt, get you to revolve that debt, and then get you to pay 23% interest on that debt, right? And so we looked and said that doesn't make sense. What if we sort of rethought it from the ground up in terms of building a credit card that is designed to get people into financially healthy behavior rather than get people paying a ton of interest?
Love that, man. So I think it's a great idea, and the world definitely needs something like that right now. So how large is the team for the Truebill division? Or I should say,
it's about, for RocketMoney, Truebill, it's about 175 people.
Okay, cool. So pretty lean team for 175. And then, so on your way, because we talked about fundraising. Are you, before you sold, were you bootstrapped? Were you funded? What was that process like?
Yeah, we did. So it was about 6 years from launching the company to selling.
Wow.
And we did 5 rounds of funding, 5.5 rounds of funding. So we did a seed round, then a Series A, Series B, Series C, and Series D. And the B, C, and D were all back to back to back, and the C, the A, and the B were really, really tough.
So, and I want to come back to that a little bit later because the funding cycle is like super interesting. So just to recap, so you went through from 6 years to launch to sell, so 6 years from 0 to 100 million?
Yeah, well, it was more like 2.5 years from 0 to 100 million, but yeah, or I should say 2.5 years from 1 to 100 is a better way of putting it.
Okay. So
and then 2.5 years from 0 to 1.
That's insane. Okay, so let's talk about that and then integrate the funding stuff in there, because 2.5 years to go from 1 to 100 million is insane. Now, in a good way, right? I'm giving you props for it. Like I told you at the beginning of the show, you're doing a great job. Not that you need to hear from me. But so let's talk through that. So why did it take you 2.5 years to get to 0 to 1? And then let's take it in two chunks. Why did it take you 2.5 years to get from 0 to 1? And then let's go to the next phase after that.
Yep. Okay, well, so your first 6 months, you're not making revenue because you're just building something that someone out there is going to use. But once you're there, I think I was just stupid, to be honest. And the conventional wisdom out there was stupid, and I listened to other people instead of looking at the actual data. And I did way too much of that for the first 3 years of this company. So RocketMoney, the category is PFM, Personal Financial Manager, right? And Mint was the original, and then other people have touched on that category with various degrees of success. So Credit Karma had some personal finance features. Obviously, they got really big and did really well. And then there's a bunch of other companies that did it or tried to do it. One of the early ideas that I had in my head that was completely wrong was that no one is going to pay for this. It needs to be free. Mm-hmm. And especially since our app was centered around tracking and canceling subscriptions, I thought, how can I charge a subscription fee for an app that gets rid of your subscriptions? That's just not going to work. And so my thinking was that this app needed to be monetized via affiliate deals, which is what Credit Karma and NerdWallet and Mint and really everyone else in the space was doing. They were, giving you information about your finances and then telling you to get credit cards or to get a personal loan or something, and then, or to get new insurance and then getting paid for that by the affiliates. So for the first 18 months, 18 months to 2 years, we were completely dependent on affiliate revenue. We did not have a premium model. And so I was out cutting deals with credit card companies and then trying to push people in the app to get a new credit card. And it didn't work. It didn't work for a number of reasons. One, there just wasn't enough revenue there. There wasn't enough engagement there to get enough clicks and to get enough conversion. But two, The bigger problem was when you do that, it really throws off your North Star. So if you think about what drives our product evolution today, it's really simple. It's people pay us a monthly fee for the app, and we try to make the app as useful as possible, right? It's a very straightforward bargain. And our thinking is if the app delivers value, people will keep it and keep paying for it, and we'll have a successful business, right? So we want to make the app as useful and valuable as possible. But when you are living off an affiliate model, that's not the model, right? Or that's not what's driving the success of your business. All of a sudden, it's not how do we make this the most useful product possible. It's at least part of your thinking is how do we get more clicks on credit cards, or how do we get people to get more credit cards, right? From Chase or Capital One or whoever's paying out that day. And so all of a sudden you're not trying to make the product more useful, you're trying to make the product more, just drive more clicks, right? And that can give you a lot of wrong signal. It can get you to optimizing towards like local maxima instead of thinking big picture. And it's ultimately just a flawed way to build anything that is going to be of value to anyone.
Yeah, no, I can see that where that would jostle your, kind of your priorities and your focus. And affiliates are great.
So it wasn't really until we were on death's door. We had 3 months runway left in the bank, and I pulled the whole team in the conference room and said, "All right, guys, we have time for one more bet. Let's put all the ideas on the whiteboard and like pick which one we're gonna do before the ride ends." And one of the ideas on the whiteboard was premium, right? Let's just like have a monthly subscription. And it was a bit of a Hail Mary pass, but it ended up working, and it sort of gave us like a little glimmer of hope, glimmer of light, and we used that, and we got one small angel check, which would give us a couple months more runway, and then during that time, we did some work on the funnel and got the conversion rate up, and we're ultimately able to take that to piece together a really, really rough Series A.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for checking this out. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss it. Also hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode at all. And if you want to find out more about how I could help you or your organization, check out my website, www.ryanstaley.io. Now we're back to the video.
Well, yeah, so what kind of, so for that, so you went the premium, and your product's not super expensive, is it?
Sorry, one more time?
Your product is, it's not like a super high costing product. Like, what was the price point that you had?
We let you choose your own price. That was something I thought was pretty cool. So you can choose a price anywhere between like $3 and $15 a month. So it could be as little as $3 a month. You can also get a ton of value out of it for free, so you don't have to pay for it. There's, every feature is free with a premium component. So for instance, subscription tracking is free, but if you want us to do the cancellation for you, that's premium. Budgets are free, but if you want custom budget categories, that's premium. Credit score is free, but if you want the full credit report, that's premium.
Okay. So like, if you're looking at that with the free plus, so you said people could pick the price. What did most people land on then between the 3 and 15?
Somewhere in the middle. It depends. Over time, we've constantly run experiments on what color that page is, or do we have a little star like a circle that says like most people pick this or recommended, right? So it varies based on when people signed up, but it's somewhere in the middle there.
Okay, so that saves you, right? That's and then that takes you. You said you pieced together a Series A. So what revenue were you at then when you were trying to get your Series A?
At the Series A, I think we were about 1.5 million.
Okay, so
annual.
1.5 million. You got the the paid for it plus premium components. So then what happens from there? Like, how did you piece it together? How did you proceed from that 1.5 million to 100 million in the next 2.5 years?
Yeah. So at the time, we were growing 20% month over month. So it took about 12 months after the Series A, we were at 6 to 8 million, somewhere in that range. And we went out to do a Series B, and just like the Series A, literally everyone in the world passed on us. I reached out to pretty much every firm I could possibly think of, and pitched them, and the graph looked great. It looked, pure exponential graph, 15% month over month growth, like clockwork. Never a down month, never a month. We didn't have a single month with less than 10% month over month growth. And that wasn't just the revenue growth. It was, every metric was improving. Retention was improving, engagement was improving, premium conversion was improving, average sale price was improving, but no one wanted to touch it. And finally, we got an inbound inquiry from this fund called Eldridge, who I'd never heard of. And I kind of blew it off and didn't take the meeting. And then they reached out again, and I did take the meeting, and they were just awesome. Like, to this day, they're one of my favorite investors. I can't say enough great things about them. But 20 minutes into the meeting, they're like, "We love this. Like, we want to do this. Let's get it done." And so that was a major lifeline for us and a huge relief. And so we did that. And then 12 months later, we must have 4x'd again. So I think we were at 25 million or something. Mm-hmm. We went out for Series C, and again, everyone in the world passed on us, which is funny because there was so much inbound interest. Like, I get half dozen emails a day, like, from big name funds, like, "I love what you're doing. I'd love to be involved. I couldn't be more excited. Can we please meet?" And then I'd meet and I'd show them every chart going up and to the right, and just no one wanted to do it. And finally, Bessemer, which is a really fantastic fund. One of the guys there, his name's Kent, just really liked what we were doing, and he said, "I love the product. I love where you're going. Let's do this." And so they did Series C, and then about 6 months later, Excel came in. Again, we pitched a bunch of funds. They all passed. Not as many, but we did pitch a few, and they passed. Excel came in and did the Series D, and then 6 months after that, we were acquired.
Okay. So why do people keep passing on you?
So I think there's a couple reasons. One is there was just a really bad stigma on the personal finance category. So the fintech category for the last 5 years up until this year was the hottest thing ever. So everyone wanted to invest in fintech. But in terms of personal finance specifically, if you look at the last 15 years, the largest exit was Mint, which was sold for 170 million. I think the second largest one was Level Money, which, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, sold for 30 or 35 million. Prosper, I think, also sold for like 20 or 30 million. I could be wrong, but that's off the top of my head. So, and it's an obvious idea, like an app to help you manage your money, but a lot of people have tried it and no one has succeeded at it. So I think investors were just weary of that in general. Two is, for consumer B2C investors, personal finance does not have the same engagement and user behavior that you would see in a game or a photo sharing app or anything else, right? And so it's hard to comp to other companies because I think it's more valuable, and I think it's pretty sticky, but people are just not going to open it every day. Some small percentage will, but a lot of people will be content just opening it monthly, or just content getting their weekly summary emails and like seeing all their reports in an email and not needing to open the app, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people miss that. And then I think there was just a ton of investors chasing the shiniest object, regardless of what the data and the metrics suggested. So there would be companies that launched with, what I would call kind of gimmicky features that instantly got a lot of VC attention and got, a 200 or $500 million valuation with way less revenue, just because it was new and maybe disruptive, whereas like a personal finance app was not seen as disruptive. So I do think there's a blind spot there on the part of investors.
Okay, so obviously if you got 1.3 billion for your exit, the next closest was 170 million. What did you do on the product side to make that to 10x that differential almost, basically? How did you do that? Because what I see with like the scale of how fast you grew, from that 1.5 million, 100 million in 2.5 years, like your solution had to have been amazing, A, and B, once you got to that point, there had to have been some realization of like how amazing the product was. So what did you do to make that a reality?
So I think it's a combination of things, of course, right? One is just we had a good core product that people fundamentally liked and found useful, right? Two is we had the world's strongest, most killer performance marketing team I've ever seen. And this team was just maniacal about, testing new channels and really building complete closed loop, sophisticated tracking and attribution. So we knew very accurately every dollar we spent, how much money we were getting back in a day, a week, a month, and a year, and 3 years, right? And obviously you can't be 100% accurate there, but the numbers we were getting back, we were pretty confident in, and we were confident enough to make large scale bets based on those numbers, right? And then the third thing is we had, on the product side, we invested really heavily in, again, tracking and measurement, such that any change we made anywhere in the product, very quickly we had a really solid understanding of how that changed not just user behavior but ultimately LTV, right? So for instance, you can raise your price very easily. That takes 10 minutes to do, right? And then the unsophisticated way of looking at it would say, okay, well, my price went up by 20%, my conversion went down by 10%, this is a 10% gain, right? But there's a lot more to it than that, right? You got to look at retention, you got to look at virality, you got to look at all sorts of factors, right? You got to look at what other tertiary features they engage with in the app, and does that vary based on the price point. Then you got to look at by channel. So for instance, do those percentages hold? Are they the same for someone who came in from Facebook versus someone who came in from a billboard, right? And so we spent a lot of time and energy building out complete visibility, tracking, attribution, and just intelligence on those figures, right? And what that let us do is deploy frameworks such that we could push out tests on really every funnel in the app at a rate that was just faster than competitors or any other company I've seen, right? And so, I'm making a lot of sweeping generalizations, but I do think today we have more tests running in the product than any company I can think of, or any product I can think of, except maybe some of the big game developers. But we do have a ton of tests running, right? So we're testing our sign-up funnel, we're testing our onboarding flow, we're testing our premium conversion screen, we're testing our premium cancellation screens, or our premium retention screens, right? And if you're disciplined about that, all of those metrics are just going to constantly march up over time. So your premium conversion rate is gonna march upward over time. Your premium price is going to move upward over time. Your retention is going to move up over time, right? And each one of those increases the LTV. And every time you increase LTV, what that lets you do is it lets you go to your marketing team and say, all right, you can bid a little bit more today than you could yesterday, right? And if you do that 100 times, suddenly you're significantly able to outbid your competitors, which means grab ad inventory that they can't afford to grab. And what that means is you're grabbing market share. Wow. As well as kind of creating the market and creating the category as well.
Love that, man. And so how many tests would you estimate you're running right now? You said you think you run more than anybody else. In the product, let's just talk about product, and then I want to hear marketing.
In the product, dozens.
Okay, so at all times you got 24 to 36 tests running on and when you say product funnels, you mean for each kind of pathway or component within the product that could lead to additional revenue or those other factors that you mentioned.
So for instance, right now we have, when you sign up, we say, hey, what are your financial goals, right? And you might say, I want to save for a home, I want to get out of debt, I want to buy a new car, I want to begin investing, I want to grow my net worth, right? These are all goals, right? So a test could be as simple as listing those horizontally, or having them in boxes.
As simple as that. So you're really taking kind of
it could be that page is text or it's got images on it, right? It could be it has images or it has illustrations on it.
Yeah, so you're really taking a direct response marketing approach that someone would normally take with copy or funnel or visuals, but you're integrating that in the product, right?
That goes from start to finish, from the first ad they see to the after using the app for a year, the emails you're getting or the app screens you're seeing. Everything is maniacally tested and measured for LTV and retention and a whole slew of other metrics.
And so, yeah, so like if you had a guess on the marketing side, then like from that initial touch point to let's say the paid ads to the funnel, how many tests are you running on a consistent basis there?
So in ads, I mean, hundreds. Um, you know, we have hundreds of ads live. Those ads have multiple variations. We have a tool, for instance, where a lot of our ads are videos, obviously, and it might be a 15-second video on Instagram. We have a tool we use. We didn't build this, but it shows video watches by second.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you can see is, for instance, okay, we have this ad, and from 2 to 3 seconds, people are dropping off, right? And so maybe your first scene in the ad is 4 seconds long. You go, you know what? No, like we need to shorten that to 2 seconds, and then cut the camera to something else at exactly 2 seconds, because that's when we're losing people is 2.25 seconds, right? And
Wow.
so, or we'll test two against each other, and one will have the same scene for 4 seconds, and then the other will have like 2 2-second scenes to open it up, right? So that's the level of testing we're doing on the ad creative.
Okay. And what's the tool that you're using with that?
It's called dynamic sequence.
Okay. Never heard of it before, but that's pretty cool, man. And so, so this is really interesting. So I guess like one of the things that stuck out to me too is, how you got from the size, how you got to the size, and your team's relatively small for that. I mean, there's companies that are 10 million that have 380 people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I guess like the level of testing and the depth of that across product and marketing, like how did you make that a reality with such a small team?
I think it comes down to prioritization, right? You really do have to invest in building out the frameworks to be able to like test broadly and at scale. But ultimately, it ends up saving you a lot of cycles, right? So there's definitely decisions that we did not make, or things we didn't build, or avenues we didn't go down as a result of testing that saved us way more cycles than the upfront investment of building your testing frameworks and your data infrastructure.
Okay. So what's your framework then for developing like testing and prioritization within that?
So one of my favorite things is vapor tests, where I'm maybe people in the company will disagree with me, but I'm hugely anti-survey. I think surveys can be really misleading and just tell you the wrong thing. There's a Steve Jobs quote where he says, in regards to the iPhone, he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a smaller phone, which is true, right? Because back then, like the hottest phone was like the Razor because it was the thinnest, right?
Yeah.
And then he threw it all on his head and came out with the iPhone, which is bigger and thicker than anything else out there. So anytime possible, I prefer doing a vapor test over a survey, or at least in conjunction with. And so a vapor test is basically you pretend to launch a feature in the app without actually launching it. So for instance, let's say I'm thinking about launching an investing feature, right? I could survey people and be like, hey, do you want investing to be available in RocketMoney, right? And some percent will say yes, some people say no, and some people say I don't care. That's a useful signal, but to me, what's a more useful signal is I'll put a button in the app, or a little section in the app, and I'll say, now introducing investing by RocketMoney, click here to get started, right? And then like I'll look at who clicks that, and then I'll say, all right, like how much do you want to get started with? And this will only go out to 0.1% of users, or a tiny number. And people say, okay, I want to invest $1,000, right? And then the next year will be like, all right, great, like sorry, like we're working on it, you're top of the wait list, we'll let you know when it's ready, right? Which I don't love doing, but I think it's for the greater good, because then what you get is you have actual data about like what percent of people that see it would actually click it, what would their average starting investment size be, what percent would complete the next step. You could even put in the next step, and that's way more reliable than what people tell you they want.
Okay, so you do that, right? And then how do you proceed from there, like in terms of like systemizing out at a broader level?
Well, from there, I mean, you've got your resources, and depending on what that data tells you, that lets you make a really informed decision from like a business case, right? So you can say, all right, there's different vectors that you prioritize across. So for instance, is this going to drive revenue is an obvious vector, right? Is this going to increase retention is a vector. Is this going to make the product more useful or more helpful for people, right? Because there's things you can do that help people, but they don't move a business metric, right? But it's valuable by itself. And then, a fourth one could be even like, is there enterprise value to this? So for instance, a year ago, launching a debit card was like what the market wanted. And Chime got this $30 billion valuation with barely any revenue because they had debit cards, and the market thought that was the most valuable thing ever, right? So for instance, if you're considering should we launch a debit card, you say, okay, is this going to move the needle on revenue? Not really. And then the last one, sorry, that I skipped is, will users actually do it, right? Because if only 1% of people are going to do it, even if it does drive revenue and people love it, it's not useful, right? But so you say, okay, like let's launch a debit card. Like, is it going to move the needle on revenue? No. Does it help people? Not really. Will people use it? Not really. But the market loves it. It's got huge enterprise value. So that would be why you would think about doing it, though I don't think it makes sense.
Okay, love that, man. It's super specific and clear. So I can see where your head's at now on that. So, and you're right. Like some of the most value that you have is not in the things you do but it's in the things that you don't do, right? So you could just waste so much time going down the wrong path. And go ahead, you're going to say something I could tell.
Yeah, I think that's actually the single biggest contributor to our success. And I can't take credit for it. It was actually my brother's doing. But, for years, every time I saw a company do something, launch a feature, and get like a mega valuation without, facing the same scrutiny of revenue or retention or anything else that we were getting turned down for, I'd go into frenzy and say, we need to launch this thing and we need to launch it now and we need to like pause work on everything else. And he was very good. We didn't always do that, but most of the time we did. He was very good at saying, you know what, like, no, that's not us. We're going to stay with the core product. It's working. People like it. It's scaling. Let's stay our course. And in the end, that ended up absolutely being the right path for us and the most successful path, right? But it's tough, like people are telling you your company's not valuable, and then another company launches doing pay advances, right? And gets $1 billion valuation, and it takes a ton of discipline, more discipline than we had actually, because we did launch pay advances, but it takes a ton of discipline to see that and not want to launch it yourself, but to instead like stay building your boring, budgeting tool.
Right. No, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So one last question, and then we got to wrap it up just based on time. But what would you say is the number one reason why you were able to get $1.3 billion for the company you built where the rest of the market was getting table scraps or nothing at all, especially considering, all prior to that, you were not looked at as very attractive by investors. So it's like you totally flipped the script. So how did, and I know might sound like a loaded question, but how did you make that a reality? And what do you think is like the single most biggest contributing factor to that?
Yeah. I don't know if I agree that other companies were getting table scraps. Valuations were high across the board.
Well, maybe not table scraps, right? But significantly less. So like 1/10 or less than what you were getting. Now, let me put it that way.
Well, if you're comparing Mint, that was more than 10 years ago. But to answer your question, like when we after we announced it, TechCrunch wrote an article saying like this is way too low. Like why did this company sell for so little? So I think you got to look at what Rocket companies actually got in the deal, right? They got the biggest, best, fastest growing personal finance app, right? They got really the only personal finance app that can acquire users at scale in a very profitable way, right? On top of that, obviously Rocket companies, the bulk of the revenue there is, or the largest piece of that business is Rocket Mortgage, right? Which is a very transactional business. You don't typically think of yourself as having a relationship with your mortgage provider, right? Or with a company that you could potentially get a mortgage with one day, right? Well, Truebill or RocketMoney now is great at building a relationship with people and delivering them value, like helping them with their finances, right? And so if you have this brand that millions of people use and millions of people really like and say, you know what, they're looking out for my finances, they're looking out for me, and they're looking out for my money, then that's a really great thing to have associated with your mortgage company, your solar company, or your loans company, right? Which companies has all of those. So I think, we definitely spoke to other acquirers or other potential acquirers, and the synergy here just made the most sense. And the opportunity of like, if this works out, where this can go made a ton more sense than anything else. And then on top of that, the business itself it still is super healthy. So, it's not like they came up with this huge number and we said yes, but we would have taken a lot less, or the market was taking a lot less. Like, we had term sheets from VCs, from really good VCs, for that same range of money. So it was not like do this or we're screwed. We're sitting on a business that we were very, very confident was going to continue doubling revenue year over year. We had a very clear path to profitability. We continued to either create more market or take market share from competitors. Every piece of this business was firing on all cylinders. So, I think, I don't think it was crazy. I think it actually made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, the way you described it did too. It's like you hit the earlier part of the value ladder of what a mortgage company would do, because you're building that trust while having a reoccurring revenue stream at really good numbers, like amazing numbers across the board, that would feed into that and then create a synergistic effect across the other.
That is said so much better than I could have said it. Or so much more concise. Thank you.
Well, I had the benefit of listening to you explain it and then processing it while you were processing it in real time. So
of listening to me stumble through it, and then you, professional podcaster, came in and cleaned up for me.
Hey man, this is what I do. I'm in sales background, so I always regurgitate in a really tight manner. So yeah, it was awesome having you on the show. I took up way too much of your time right now. So where can people find you? Where can they find RocketMoney? And we'll wrap things up from there.
Yeah, so URL is just rocketmoney.com. Obviously I'm biased and I drink the Kool-Aid, but I do think it is just genuinely something that everyone should have. And then I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, or really anywhere else.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll pop it in the show notes so that people can take advantage of it. And then we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thanks for being on, man.
Thank you. Take care.